Hey, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to part two. We had part one already. I know so many of you enjoyed that. I thought it was awesome. I really enjoyed going back and editing that one. Part two, oh man, it was a treat to go back and edit it, listen to all the things that Liza had to say. Thank you so much for your candor. I think we can all learn a lot from it. I had a fabulous time. Thank you for watching. If you're wondering what one was, you can go to the playlist on my channel. It's all under Liza Conversation. And we're going to go over, favorite champion to a really surprising to me revelation. I appreciate the story, though, about her own streak. She has the longest solo streak in all of 4Loki history. And just some stuff that kind of came up and she thought about as we're going along, being a mother, playing a game, and justifying this as a hobby. All kinds of things. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy. Please hit us up in the comments section. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy.
I miss playing Ghost. I really do.
But I get it. I get it. It's cool to see you doing it. It's because I know you as an Omega Red, and then other troublesome fights. Cycling in someone. But it's really cool to see this.
Yeah, like I remember whenever I first joined, Taters was like, okay, so what champions are you comfortable with? Other than Ghost, because that I only had a 5-star and he was
okay.
Pete already had the 6-star. And it actually took me a while to think of anyone because I didn't have Quake at the time. I completely changed who I was after I and I had never used Omega Red until like my first season in 4Loki. I didn't even have the 5-star.
So then, I think this is a great segue actually into the next kind of round of topics. Who's your favorite champion and why? And if we leave that in, it will be kind of, Liza, as you can see on the screen here, used to be a bit of a Ghost player. And now I associate you with Omega Red, right? And so many great Omega Red players will say, well, I learned how to play Omega Red from watching Liza's videos, like Slaymon and SSX. I've heard him multiple times say that. So can you tell us about so you didn't even have Omega Red? Would you join or 4Loki or what did you say there exactly? It was so surprising to me.
Yeah, I did not. So I didn't have a 5-star Omega Red when I joined 4Loki, and I think so when I joined I had very low prestige. I think I was like 10.7. I didn't have a rank 3 6-star. I was the only person in the alliance besides Brian who didn't have a rank 3 6-star.
Yeah.
So my prestige was extremely low, and I basically got in, and Dreamin told me that because he was the one who really pushed to get me in to the alliance. He was like, you have to get some deals on July 4th, and I know I didn't actually have to, but he's like, your prestige is atrocious. It's like so low. You have to do something here.
Yeah.
So I did. I picked up, I think it was the first time they did class Nexus crystals, and I went for, maybe it was just a regular Nexus, but I pulled Omega Red from a Nexus crystal, and then I think I duped him in the same opening from a Nexus crystal.
Okay.
So after that, I was just like, okay, I guess that'll be my rank 3 6-star, but I still didn't have the class catalyst for it, and I finished a piece of content and got mutant. So
really,
I ranked him up before I had ever really played him. It was like off season, and Taters was like, just practice in like Realm of Legends or something, because you're going to be using him a lot.
Yeah.
And I had no clue what I was doing, So as far as my favorite champion goes, I think that's part of why I love Omega Red so much, because I can go back and like watch myself improving with him. I was so horrible with him when I first started. Just like it felt like I was constantly dying. So I'm most comfortable with him, and obviously Ghost and Quake.
Yeah.
But my favorite champion currently, like if I was just gonna like go have fun with a champion in a quest, it would probably actually be Null. I just pulled him and ranked him up as a 6-star, and he is a ton of fun. So he's currently my favorite champion just because he's new and exciting.
Yeah.
But I'm not most comfortable with him at all.
Well, I found it actually a little almost tough to explain why Null is so fun. Are you able to put it into words?
So maybe I like I didn't read his abilities. I'm like a horrible member of the CCP. I like don't test champions really. I never have time.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
But like I knew nothing about him. I knew that like he puts debuffs on you and that's pretty much it. So I went into Realm of Legends and I was messing around. I figured out how to get debuffs on the opponent with like heavy attacks and like mediums and stuff. And I think it's just satisfying to build up so many of them. You can build them so high. And then I just threw a special 3 and all of a sudden the fight was over in like 10 hits or something. So I just think that the build-up is pretty fun. And like the reward for the build-up is really worth it. And he's suicide friendly and I'm always running suicide masteries. I don't like being forced to change my masteries for a champion.
Yeah.
And I like that about Null because I think that he's good with or without suicides. I think, I mean, he heals with them, but, I don't think you need them.
No, I agree. Yeah, I feel very, very similarly. All right, that's really cool. That was interesting to learn. I guess just because I've seen so much Omega Red, I just assumed that was going to be your favorite champion. But I love Null. In fact, I was tempted for him to be my last rank 4. I was very, very tempted for it. But he was coming up in the Featured Crystal. It felt like, I don't know if I really want to put 200 SIGs into him and then potentially pull him. I also got a little thrown off there. It seems as though you probably paused your fight video to explain something. And I thought,
I noticed that too. I got a little confused.
Yeah, I was like, uh-oh, what's going on with my internet? All right. So, and then the next question here was, how do you juggle life as an adult with a job and a family? The questioner didn't know that you have a family, but I'm aware of that. With also being completely at the apex of this game, like one of the best players in this game, an alliance leader, a BG leader, a war planner, in what's, I think, arguably the most high-profile alliance in the game. How do you do all that?
Well, honestly, like it's tough. It's it's not easy. I feel like I don't have a ton of time to do a whole lot. But I think for me it's like people have hobbies, like most adults have some sort of hobby. Yeah. And for me this is my hobby. Like I feel like I've made, friends that I care about. I'm invested in how they're doing. So it's like kind of like virtually hanging out with them, especially, with how things have been for the past couple of years, not being able to go out as much and stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I treat it the same way that I would any sort of hobby. Like I feel like as a parent, as an employee, that can't be like all that you do. Like you have to do stuff for yourself. And I feel like this is something that I do for myself. And I'm really lucky that my family, supportive of that.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's like it's a juggling act between like, school, work, getting people to like extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
Now war planning. It's all a juggling act, but it's like a puzzle that I've been able to fit together pretty well, and I'm grateful for that. Like I mean, it's not for everyone. I don't think everyone could do it.
Yeah.
But it's I'm glad that I can.
When were games, and I think in particular video games, were they a part of your life before MCoC?
So I've always liked just like screwing around on my phone, like playing an app, like especially when, right after I had my daughter, like if she would be like taking a nap, I'd be bored, like wanting something to do. But like video games were something I did more growing up than I did as an adult. And I just stumbled across this game with my stepson, and he's really into Marvel.
Yeah.
We both downloaded it one summer. He was, off school.
Yeah.
And we got so into it. And I mean, he still plays. Like both of us obviously still play.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he's like starstruck by the fact that, like Legacy's in my battle group. And
Yeah.
he watches like all of Brian's streams and stuff. I mean, like he doesn't play competitively, but he does play, and he is involved in the community. So I started playing this as like just something to do with him, just to hang out, and I love it. I think it's such a good game. It has its flaws, but overall, there's oh yeah, I mean, it has its flaws, but there's obviously a reason that all of us keep playing it, and all of us have stuck with it through those flaws.
Yeah. It was funny, as I thought you were going to be like, no, that was it. It has its flaws, period. It's got a lot of flaws.
No.
That's amazing. I had no idea. I know for me, part of the quote unquote balance actually happened when I started the YouTube channel, as unintuitive as that would possibly be, because it helped me accept that, like, no, I really enjoy playing this game, and taking 10 to 15 minutes where I tell my wife, like, hey, I got to go do these war fights. And her feeling like, yeah, that's fine. Even though she probably would have been okay with it all along. Having the channel and having it feel like justified. I'm not sure how to explain that, but like almost as if like playing games on their own wasn't worthy of those 10 to 15 minutes, where once it was part of something that I was building, made it worthy. Can you relate to that at all? Or, I mean, I know not everyone's the same.
No, I mean, like, absolutely. And I think that's an internal struggle that we have. It's like, spouses and parents, is like feeling like doing something for yourself is selfish.
Yeah.
Or not doing, making a decision that isn't putting someone else first is somehow wrong. Or like that, playing a game is silly, and taking time out of your day to do it is kind of like, it's a trivial thing. But we all deserve to have hobbies, and I think that you're right. I think that I started feeling more justified in playing when I got more involved with the community and started like uploading my war videos and stuff, is when I started feeling a little bit more like, okay, I can ask for this time now. Because there's like a purpose behind it, other than I just want to do well in this fight. It's like, oh, I'm going to be recording this fight. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it totally does.
Yeah, so I think I completely relate to what you're saying. And
it's interesting though. Like, would you have felt odd if I'm trying to come up with a good analogy to kind of really hone in on this, but if like you started a book, right? Or you started taking a class at school, and you're really into it. Would you have the same level, or would you think you would have had the same level of like hesitation or whatever word you want to use for it, in saying like, hey, you know what, tonight I really want to go read this book, as you would have saying like, tonight I really got to go plan this war?
I think that I would have felt a little bit more silly saying I need to plan this war than I would like I need to read a book. I think somehow, like, I don't know if it's a societal thing or what, but like people think that like games aren't like valid. I mean, I don't even know what the best word is, like a valid hobby, or like something worthwhile to do or invest your time into. And I've had wars that I've posted where I've died. I've clearly been devastated, like while I'm talking about this death, I'm just like, I was just so upset. I'm like kind of reliving it.
Yeah.
And I've gotten comments like, it's just a game, like, why do you care this much? It's like, like invalidating the experience that I had. And to me, that just feels like, well, I understand that it's a game, but it's my hobby. It's something that's important to me, and it's something that I care about, or I wouldn't do. I don't invest my time in things that I don't care about,
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's, something that we should feel guilty about. I think it's something that a lot of people, and I think especially parents, do feel guilty about.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but maybe you do, but I don't know like where that guilt comes from.
If I knew why, we could take this on the road and make a lot of money, I think, helping people feel better about themselves. But, and if you don't mind, I think we're kind of at a point where, I think you know this, you are a woman, you're talking about being a mom. And if we can kind of start to kind of merge the conversation we're having, very factual about the game and your experience, but also bringing in a little bit of your experience in that way, because, I think you'd have to be almost intentionally not paying attention to it to know that, I think with mobile games, women are now making up, it's estimated about 50%, if not more, of the people who are playing it. And my understanding, I watched some videos, read some articles in preparation for this. They're now estimating that women are making up to, I think it was 2/5 of players of like console games and PC games. And yet, I know, I was surprised by that number. Are you?
I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I was really, really surprised from it. But this was, reputable sources like Bloomberg and BBC. There's some videos on that, and they were interviewing teams of girls. They're young women, of girls who were trying to become like professional esports gamers, playing Fortnite and I can't think of the other game. I don't play it myself. I don't know it. But anyway, so that's where I got the stats from, and I was actually really surprised by it. Are you surprised by the mobile number and the console number, or just one of them?
I think I'm surprised by both, like equally. I think I'm surprised by both. I really didn't know, because I don't feel like it's a demographic that is, represented very heavily, at least in like content creation. If you look at MCoC, look at all the content creators that exist for this game, what percentage of them are women?
Yeah.
Very few. Very, very few.
And so obviously, like, I think based on the experience I've had with MCoC, I would nowhere near say 50% of the players are women. Would you feel similarly?
Yeah, I doubt it, but I mean, you never know. Like when I started playing this game, I didn't, advertise the fact that I was a woman.
That's true. And so that's really interesting to me. Did you ever intentionally maybe mislead that you weren't a woman, or how do you even go about doing that?
So, when I first started playing, I didn't I didn't have Line. Like the Line app wasn't something I got right away,
Yeah.
So it's like all game chat back and forth. So during those times, like it never came up, but people would be like, "Oh, hey fellas," and I wouldn't correct anyone. I would, I wasn't gonna be like, "Actually," there was none of that. So then when I got Line, I don't know if it's that it never came up, or if it's that I didn't want it to change the dynamic that I had, within my alliance. Like the last thing I wanted was to be treated differently for being a woman, playing with a group of what I assume were men. So I don't know. It's, I think it took me a while. I know it took me a while to bring it up to an alliance that I had been in for quite some time.
Yeah.
And at that point, I did tell them.
How does one even have that conversation, right? Like, because Line, right, there's most alliances have a variety of chats for BGs and AQ and what have you. Like, are you comfortable talking a little bit about how you even did that?
Yeah. I don't remember like the day it happened or like the day it clicked. I remember being nervous about it beforehand, because I had been talking to these people for like a couple months, you know? and I had never corrected them, and they kind of taught me how to play the game. Like, they explained to me, like, I remember asking somebody one time what a node was.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that word.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of weird. I feel like it just came up kind of naturally in conversation, though people were, saying something, and I was just like, oh yeah, well, actually, I'm a woman. And the response wasn't, it's only ever been positive. I've never had like a negative response from an alliance mate. Before people already knew when I was joining that I was a woman.
Yeah.
A poor response from people. But there's always that fear, like you just don't want it to change the dynamic in, an in-game relationship, if that makes sense. Like, I knew joining for Loki that there were guys that joke, and that say things that I think are funny, and I have no issue with it. None of it's like, rude towards women, but it's like, I was worried joining that that they weren't going to feel comfortable being themselves and joking with their friends the way that they always had. Because that's the last thing that I want. Like, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Like, I feel like sometimes people feel like they need to walk on eggshells. In certain, I don't know. I have no idea if I'm saying that right or not.
No, I think you are. If it's okay, I'm going to tell you kind of what I feel like I'm hearing. And that is, to use an example, you didn't want your presence in the alliance to mean that if a guy makes a joke, another guy will be like, hey guys, there's ladies in the chat now. Like, yeah. And I think that's really cool of you. I think that is really cool. And being in For Loki, I will say that it's like any other chat. Like, there's jokes that are made that I think some people might say, like, hey, that's not appropriate around women, But none of them have any, like, I think, anger, or to use the more common term, like hate. I think it's just people making jokes that they make with their close friends. And
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody in For Loki or in any alliance that I've personally been in a chat have said like anything like misogynistic. It's never about women. It's jokes, like it's jokes with each other, you know, like but I feel like a lot of, people are just nervous about offending people.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to be that. I don't want to be the source of that for anybody, because I'm not offended easily. So
that makes a lot of sense, and thank you for providing us your experience. I think that's something important for all conversations, but especially for this one, since this is what we're doing right now, is that you're sharing your experience. I'm sharing my experience. I don't speak for all men, and you don't speak for all women. This is our experience, right? And you brought up For Loki, and again, like I think arguably the most high profile alliance in this game. You've talked about Brian and Legacy, by far the largest channels. Just joining an alliance with them, one, come with pressure. You're joining this alliance. Does that come with pressure? And then additionally, like, did you feel any extra pressure do you think you did because you are a woman?
So, I felt immense pressure joining For Loki. I didn't feel like I was qualified to be here for like a really long time.
Yeah.
And that had nothing to do with being a woman. That just had to do with like the experience I knew I was lacking in Masters. Like, I hadn't been playing in Masters for as long as everybody else.
Yeah.
And my roster was, underdeveloped at the time, so I didn't feel like I truly deserved to be in the Alliance. But I don't think that I felt any extra sense of pressure joining For Loki as a woman, because I had already kind of befriended some people in the Alliance. So it wasn't like, I was applying to an alliance where I didn't know anyone and I told oh, actually I'm a woman, and I was unsure if that would like somehow change, whether or not I got accepted into the alliance. Like, I feel like the communication had already been pretty open between me and, people in the alliance who were part of the recruiting process.
Yeah. Something you said earlier was really interesting to me is I felt like you were saying you've never had a negative reaction in MCoC that you felt was due to you being a woman. I don't want to mischaracterize what you're saying. Does that feel pretty accurate?
In an alliance that I've been in, yes, that's true. In general, like, posting on YouTube and stuff, I think I've had some negative reaction to being a woman, but not within any alliance I've ever been in. I've never had like a bad experience because of it.
Okay. And then did that influence at all how you ran your channel or things you wanted to do with your channel or just any approach to having a channel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that women, I don't know if it's just like in gaming or society in general, I think are sometimes just held to slightly different standards, like as far as, competition level, or like, you hear like when you're a kid, like, oh, you're good for a girl, or like, just little things like that. So whenever I started uploading videos and like actually trying to take it a little bit more seriously, I made a decision that I wanted my channel to be like only about gameplay and strategy, and not about the fact that I was a woman. And that's why, when you and I discussed like, doing this, I don't know what you would call it, like, I don't consider it an interview, but like, a conversation.
Yeah.
About being a woman in gaming. I told you, I was like, I don't know if I'm the best person for this, because like I don't try to make the focus my gender. I like it, I make the focus about my gameplay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there are a few things like I've approached differently. Like I decided, I decided it after I started getting a lot of people asking me about it. But like, every time I would upload a video, I would like upload a war video, and it would be like the comment would be like face cam, and I'm just like, I know like male YouTubers who have like just as many or more subscribers than I do, who are never asked about that. And I just made the decision that like I don't want people subscribing to me based on anything other than my gameplay, and I don't even know if that makes sense, but I wanted to like separate like the person from the gameplay as much as I could, and just make it about like skill only, and not being like skillful for a woman, or like kind of going back to that whole thing from when we were younger. So
yeah. No, I think that makes so much sense, and there's so much there. It kind of is reminding me of I really enjoy women's soccer, and that Mia Hamm quote. I'll probably ruin it a little bit here, but it's like, she had a coach. She's like, "Oh, you run pretty fast for a girl," and she's like, "You could too if you practice harder." Which I love. It's just very cool, and that makes a lot of sense for me. And one thing that's interesting for me is that it would feel as though video games would be like the great equalizer, right? Because in general, now I'm talking about generalities here, right? In general, males are bigger, they are stronger, they are maybe faster, right? In general, there's women who are stronger than men and bigger than men and faster than men. It's there's all kinds of variables there and things, and yet you would think, or I would think, that because none of that is involved, video games would be the complete equalizer, where like it would not matter your your gender or or how you identify or anything. And yet it feels like it's still completely relevant. Does that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and it's something that I like don't understand. You know, I mean, like I still remember a YouTube comment that I got. I uploaded a war video,
Mhm.
and somebody commented on it, and they said, I think B Manny was the leader at the time still.
Yeah.
And somebody said, "Whoa, for Loki recruited a girl, is B Manny sniffing glue?" Or it was like something like that. It was like really cringy, and it had
Yeah.
nothing to do with like the gameplay. I didn't die in the war. It's not like I was, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, like there was no. It was just so out of left field that I like felt the need to respond to it. I was just like, "What are you talking about?" You know, like I've never had someone be like so rude to me for no reason.
Like, you don't know me.
But yeah, I mean, like you just can't take that stuff personally. Like on it, you just can't. It's, you know, because it's not about you. It's about them, and it's unfortunate that it exists and that there are people who feel like, you know, like men and women aren't on equal playing field in a video game. Just feels silly.
It totally does. And yet, you know, I think I'm about 10 years, give or 10, 15 years older than you. And so like, you know, the logical part of my brain is like, this is ridiculous. And yet the other side, whatever that other side is, the illogical, I don't think it is like, no, dude, come on. You grew up and you played, you know, Nintendo and Sega Genesis, and girls didn't play those games. That's ridiculous. You know, and my logical brain is like, you realize how little sense you're making right now. And so like, I can understand how little sense it makes while also understanding that it's happening or why it's happening. And then, you know, you go on YouTube and you've now like opened yourself up to the world. And I think it's really unfortunate that that's the advice, right? The advice you just said, right, is like, what did you say? Like, don't let it get to you, or it's about the comment or not about you. It's really unfortunate that needs to be the advice. That shouldn't have to happen, and yet it's the world we're in. And so that kind of leads to something I want to ask you about is, how much do you feel is just general toxicity? I'm going to try not to use that word too much because it's used a lot. But just general anger. Is general, like, people feel like you put yourself on a stage so that I can insult you. That's why you've done this. Here's the rules. You are on YouTube, I insult. That's the exchange here. And how much do you think is because a player is a female or a woman, or just different?
So that's hard for me because I don't know, and I don't like to pretend to know.
Yeah.
Like what people's intentions are, or like what I try to take what people say at face value.
Okay.
So if somebody like that commenter who said like, you know, oh, it was like B Manny sniffing glue. I don't know if he was just like trolling around on the internet, like kind of being an idiot. Like I don't know. Maybe he would have said something, you know, equally rude to a man. You know, I mean, he probably would have. But I just took it for what it was, and I'm fortunate because a lot of the comments that I do get on YouTube are positive. You know, they're not negative. It's a very small percent that are negative, but I would say like probably 80% of the negativity that I do get on YouTube is, at least what they're saying, is that it's like gender based. So
so
yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, so I do YouTube too. Obvious statement of the day.
Yes.
And you know, people like to insult. Some people do, but I think if you statistically looked at it, like the percentage of it that are insults versus positive, it's significantly smaller, the insults.
Yes.
And I feel like the insults are often like, what's the most obvious thing? Like, I feel like the person is going to insult because that's what they want to do.
Yes. No, I can totally, I can totally.
Yeah. But I'd be really interested in how many insults a female gets in comparison to me. Right.
So like, so I mean, like, just if it's any indication to you, like, I still remember that comment.
Yeah.
You know, like that's it. It's not like an all the time thing. Like, I still remember the negative comments, because they're so few and far between.
They are. Okay. Which is cool because and listen to that, everyone, is the comment didn't stick because it was so meaningful and powerful and profound. It stuck because
Right.
it was so unusual. It was unique. It was so odd. Keep that in mind. I really like that, by the way. So
I mean, it was genuinely bizarre.
yeah.
And I remember laughing about it. Like I distinctly remember laughing about it. So
So, but which is great, and I think that says a lot about you and like maybe your self confidence, maybe things you've been through in life. You've been able to develop that. What about young people, right, or girls who are really interested in gaming? Do you have advice for them? Or go ahead with whatever you're about to say.
I was just gonna say, like, so that's a little bit harder for me. Like, younger, as a mom, like my daughter, she sees, that I upload YouTube videos. She always tells me that that my YouTube channel, as small as it is her biggest flex, is her words. So
That's cool.
she loves it, and she really, really wants to make a YouTube channel. Like, she enjoys that kind of stuff. She likes putting herself out there.
Yeah.
And I've told her no. Part of it's like her age.
Yeah.
Probably a big part of it is, but I feel like, because of what you were talking about earlier, some people just logging onto the internet, just to be hurtful.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit harder for younger people to deal with properly and not internalize.
Yeah.
So, if we're talking about like a girl, like, I mean, it always goes back to my daughter. She's young, but not super young. She's in middle school.
Okay.
So if she said, like, Mom, I really want to start playing video games, I'd be like, of course, yeah, you should. Like, we do play video games together sometimes.
Yeah.
But if she said, like, Mom, I want to start playing video games and start like a YouTube channel for it, I would probably tell her, I don't know what I would say. I'd have to think about it a little bit.
Yeah, smart parent.
And monitor it really closely. So
yeah. Well, they're more impressionable, right? They're less likely to understand that the comment really has nothing to do with them or who they are. This is about, like you said, the commenter, and there's nothing you can do about that. So and smart parent to not have the firm answer right away until you've actually figured it out. That's one of the hardest parenting things.
Oh yeah, that's like my favorite answer, is like, let me think about it.
So though, let's make the person a little bit older, and someone in the alliance is like, hey, by the way, I'm a woman. I just haven't really been comfortable saying it, but you've really inspired me. I'd like to create a channel. Like, do you have advice to them?
So I would say, kind of decide what you want your channel to be about at the beginning and act accordingly. So there are women who run their channels completely differently than how I run mine. And that's totally fine. Like, I'm subscribed to them. I love their YouTube channels, and like, they might stream more than I do because I like really never stream.
Yeah.
So I guess it would depend, like, on if they're trying to do something more similar to what I'm doing, which is just like uploading, competitive content and trying to teach people how to do things. Or if they're trying to pursue YouTube or social media as more of like like a side hustle or like a job, like the advice would be completely different.
Okay.
So I think that as far as like giving, like, okay, when I remember when MP Blaze was wanting to start his channel, he messaged me and just said, hey, do you have any advice? I'm, thinking about doing this and uploading my war videos similar to what you're doing. I gave him the exact same advice that I would give anybody, like man or woman, who was wanting to make a similar channel, which is upload consistently, like upload at least when you're starting out, like 3 times a week. Be prepared, and even like embrace negative commentary. Everyone's gonna have an opinion play on what you could have done differently if you died, or even if you didn't die. So just like take those comments with grace, and don't be offended. Like, you have to have a thick skin. Everyone's got an opinion, and if you put yourself out there on the internet, people feel entitled to give it to you. You know, so I think that that's the advice that I would give to literally anybody who was wanting to do that. Like, I wouldn't change my advice for someone based on the fact that they were a woman. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think it does. I mean, it sounds like you're tailoring your advice to the person, what kind of content they want to be creating. And as someone who gives advice, like, if people ask me, I know it's crazy, but people do ask me for advice. And that's usually one of the first steps, is like, well, what are you trying to do? And how are you trying to get there? Like, how do you want to end up there? And I think that ends up being one of the best ways to give advice, because blanket advice is tough, right? It often doesn't work out. I feel like the answer is obvious, but there's been other comments. So do you feel as though it is more difficult for women, or that's not even the right way to phrase it? Do you feel as though there is an animosity that women will face in games, in gaming in general, that men would not?
So that's kind of hard to answer. Like, in some ways, yes. And in some ways it could just, because I was thinking about this earlier, like before we talked, I was just kind of, thinking about, just thinking about the entire conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's so much that, like, women, that there's like a sense of animosity towards them, or if that's just our interpretation, or our fear is that there will be a sense of animosity towards us,
Yeah.
And I can give you an example. So Bryn is, arguably the best player I've ever played with. He's just so good at the game. So hyper competitive, has held many records in 4 Loki. And the season before I broke the solo streak record, Bryn set a new one. And I think he blew the previous one out of the water by like 30 fights or something.
Yeah.
And he was very proud of that, and he should have been, you know. And I remember, like, distinctly, and I didn't equate it at the time to, like, gender or anything like that, just, like, Bryn's competitive nature. I remember being worried that, like, outperforming Bryn would, like, hurt him somehow. And I actually had the thought in my mind that maybe I should die before I broke his record. At that point I was so dialed in. I knew I was gonna die. My mentality was really, really good. I was going into every fight super prepared, super confident, unless there was like some, freak accident with the game and my screen just stopped working. I knew I wasn't going to be dying to any fights. And I actually had the thought to die, to not break his record. And I don't think that, and I could be wrong, but I'm not a man, so I don't know. I don't think that because I'm relatively competitive, I don't think that another competitive man would have considered doing that. and again, I could be wrong, so I don't know if it's something that is like just built into us a little bit, that we're not supposed to compete with the opposite gender, or we're like men are better at video games. Like, I don't know what the underlying thought process is there. But I did think that it was interesting, because in my day-to-day life, I wouldn't do that. I would never think about something like that. I would never, encourage my child to do something like that. And I know that it wasn't anything that Bryn did that was causing me to feel like I had to do that. It was something within me, maybe a fear of there being some sort of animosity.
Yeah.
So.
And you were the BG leader, or the BG he was in. You're an alliance leader, and on some level, I would imagine there's a feeling of like responsibility for keeping things peaceful, happy, right?
Yeah. Well, Taters was planning all of the wars at the time, and like, I've always said, I'm not a boss killer. Bryn was. He doesn't play anymore right now.
Yeah.
So I knew that Bryn was more skilled. I knew that Bryn was taking harder fights than me. And I didn't want there to be a sense of like, oh, well, she got it given to her like more easily than my streak was given to me. I didn't want there to be any of that either, because that would have fallen back on Taters, who was planning all the wars at the time.
Yeah. That's interesting, though, because that's like a slightly different angle to it. That to me sounds a little bit like you don't want to deal with the excuse making that a person who'd be upset by this might start making.
Yeah, I definitely think that was. I definitely think that was part of it.
Which is crazy, because and this is kind of like how our brains work a little bit, though, right? Like, even me, like doing the research for this, Bloomberg and like the BBC, and no one's going to watch the video that's like, hey, guess what, guys? Girls are doing great in video games. Like, oh, okay, thanks, that's great. Like, no one's clicking on that one, but we click on the one that shows like these women, these young, they are girls, guys. I call them women, I call them girls. These were girls, they were young, and they were competing in these esports. And of course, they show this clip of looks like a boy, teenage boy, yelling at them and telling them to go make sandwiches, right? And that like gets the click. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. And when it does happen, it is terrible. It's horrible. It should not be happening.
Yeah.
But how much is that negative and it being so strong influencing the way we think about these other interactions where you shouldn't even be thinking about them? Like, I don't know what Bryn ended up thinking, and if you're comfortable sharing the story, if he said anything to you when you broke the record, I'd love to hear it. But if you don't want to share it, but I think the other 28 people in your alliance would have been really pissed off if you hadn't broken that record. And the other 28 people are men. I think
you're right, and I know that Bryn would have been too. Like,
yeah,
and that was kind of my point, is that like all of that stuff, like all of that inner turmoil about like, oh, what should I do? What should I do?
Yeah,
that was all me. That was all in my head and had nothing to do with like anything Bryn said or how he was acting, or like that was just 100% me feeling like in some way. I don't think undeserving is the right word, but like that I shouldn't outperform somebody who I knew was better than me, And Bryn, he messaged me after I broke the record and he congratulated me. Everything was great. He was, super supportive. Like it had nothing to do with Bryn and everything to do with some train of thought or some way of thinking that I have like deep down that I didn't even know was there, know? And I don't think that if it was, and the more I've thought about it, like I used to play in Masters with this woman named Darcy. We played in Savage Squad together. She was an officer and she brought me over. And I think if it were Darcy's record, I don't think that I would feel guilty about breaking it. I think it would be like a friendly competition. So I just don't know like where that comes from. And like the thing with Bryn. So But no, Bryn was very supportive, very happy for me.
Yeah.
I love Bryn and wish he would come back to the game. But I hope he's doing well.
Same exact thoughts here on Bryn. Would you mind hearing why I think that? And I think it was great that you gave that very specific example. And then you can tell me what you think. I would love to hear that if you have time for it. So that's fascinating to me. And I thought it was so cool that you brought in the situation with Darcy. And I've gone through this like in my own marriage, and just I'm raising 2 daughters, and as a male, I mean, I played sports, I played college sports. Like, I enjoy competition. I identify with a lot of these things, right? I think we're so often the product of the generation that raised us.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then as we get older and more comfortable with ourselves, we get teenagers and we kind of start to develop some independence and some thinking on these things. And then our 20s and 30s and some of us in our 40s, we start to, I think, become more comfortable with it and more aware of it. And then we might be raising kids, and then we're raising them with like what are now our beliefs and our belief system. And one of the really interesting challenges, I think, is, I think for the most part, our generation, like we're generalizing now, and younger, believes in equality. And they're like, yeah, women can be great at anything. Seems weird to not think that.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely.
But there is this idea of like this fragile male ego.
Yes.
And you really shouldn't upset them. Like, let them have their wins. And
yes.
So if you go and you beat them at something that they are supposed to be better at, like video games, you are just like the worst person in the world. Like, why would you ever do that? You've just upset this otherwise very nice man. And so
I agree with everything that you're saying. Like, I'm seeing where you're going.
Okay, yeah. And so I think as a result, because women are humans, and humans have varying degrees and enjoyment and tolerances for competition, meaning some women are really going to like it, the only thing that's left for a lot of them to compete against is each other.
Right.
And I think so as a result, it becomes very natural to do that, right? And to be like okay with beating Darcy or these sorts of things, because it was not okay to beat the Bryns of the world. The real irony is, or the real upsetting thing, or the thing where I hope younger people get this better, is Bryn was totally okay with it.
Right.
Does that make sense to you? Like,
yeah.
If it doesn't, poke holes in it.
That makes a ton of sense, and I completely agree with you, because I know that Bryn was okay with it. I know that everyone was okay. That everyone was like, celebrating and cheering for him. Like, the whole thing was like very exciting, and everyone was so supportive. And you're right, it's something that was in my mind, like a sense of like what you just described, like the sense of the fragile male ego. And I want to be clear, like some men do, like that is a reality for them. Like some men do feel like women shouldn't be competing with them when it comes to certain things, and that's their opinion. But I think that a lot of times we tend to like put that thought on all situations when it doesn't apply, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think we're in uncharted waters. Like, we didn't get the playbook on how to deal with this, because for the most part, right? Again, guys, we're talking about, like, even I use the term guys to mean everyone. Like, we didn't get the playlist on this. We weren't raised by this thought. And so, like I said, I still play sports. I'm not very good at them anymore, but I'll still go play sports, and I'll be out playing basketball. And if a woman comes on the court, like, there's this thing of like, I'm so excited that they're there. I love for my daughters to see that. But I'm also like, if I now go full out, am I the jerk that picked on the woman? Even though I know that's not how I should think about it.
Right. And she would prefer for you to try.
Yes. And then the second I don't try and she goes around me and scores, I'm like, all right, it's on. Yeah, I'll block her shot. I'll do what I have to do. Right. Like, she's just another person playing basketball.
Yeah.
which I guess leads me to probably my final question, although this has been fascinating for me, is to me, and even just be speaking directly to me, if that'll, or to all men who are open to this sort of thing, is how do we make this better? How do we help this be better for any woman who wants to come and play at the apex of the game, who wants to get into gaming, who shows up to the basketball court? Like,
sure.
How do we do that? In your, what advice would you give us?
So, I think, so the first thing is, for me, the biggest hurdle for me not doing it, was myself and my own fear. So if you are a woman and you feel like you want to be playing this game or any game or doing whatever more competitively, just do it. Seriously, just do it. So that's the first thing. As far as what men can do to make women more inclined to just put themselves out there and try.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that it sounds so silly, but just don't be strange. Just don't be a weirdo, just treat women who you're playing with in an alliance the way that 4Loki treats me, which is like everyone else. I joke around, it's me and 29 men in this alliance together. And there are times where and now we're in a position to where I would say I'm in a position of leadership and sometimes, authority over 9 adult men. And none of them, and they're, everyone has to go to some extent, none of you guys have given me any indication or iota of an issue, just in general, but especially based on traditional gender roles. So I think that everyone should just take a page out of your guys' book and just treat women like normal people. Honestly, at the end of the day, that's it. Don't walk on eggshells around us. Don't, make things weird. Don't try to be heroic if somebody makes an edgy joke in a chat that a woman's in. If she's offended, then let her say that. Nobody needs anyone to be a savior for them unless they've said that bothers them. So I would just say just be cool and treat her like normal, and and don't be weird. Don't come to a woman in general don't approach a woman in a way in a video game in a way that you approach a male friend that you're playing video games with.
It's so simplistic, and I actually chuckled when you said it, because it's of course, oh, treat women like they're people. All right, I can try that. Yeah. But it's just it's something that we have. I do think some of us, and by us I mean men, I think we do need to be aware of it. I think it's something that we have to consciously work on. I'll be very honest. I'm using the example, and it's a little different because it's a sport where video games are, I think, a little different, as we've talked about. But it's something to work on. It's no one walks on the basketball court because they want you to let them score. So just treat everyone the same. I said that was going to be the last question. I actually have one last one.
Okay.
And thank you so much for honestly all of this. I cannot thank you enough.
Yeah, of course.
All of this being said, and the advice is, and I thank you for giving advice to women who want to play in the games. I thought I had asked that earlier and I didn't. I wasn't doing the stereotyped male thing of let's make this about me. Advise me, please.
No, I didn't take it that way at all. I just want to, I guess I just wanted to make it clear that there's a sense of responsibility on both sides to make the gaming world a little bit more, at least on the high end of it, more inclusive.
Yeah.
It's not just up to men to go out there and make sure that women feel comfortable. It's our job to take the first step a lot of times.
Oh, it is a two-way street. Like, even though we're saying, like, just treat women like they're human, because guess what they are, is, that being said, do you feel any pressure because you're a woman to be like the first one, or to like set an example for other women who may be interested in playing this game or other games or having YouTube channels?
I don't feel any pressure at all, because all I can do is it sounds so weird, but all I can do is what I'm doing. Like, I haven't done anything or changed my behaviors in any way to try to be the first woman playing, like, in 4 Loki, for example. Not in Masters, because Darcy played in Masters before I did, but to, like, have a YouTube channel and publicly play in a higher end alliance, and, like, sharing, like, successes and failures and stuff like that. So I actually don't feel any pressure. I feel, a sense of pride, and I hope, or maybe I don't. It would be really nice if, like, there was another woman who plays this game who, is skilled, or, is approaching a skill level that they feel like they could give up, and maybe they just kind of feel like, oh, it's like a man's world at the top, like, I, can't compete up there. I don't know how to, like, break through. It would make me feel really proud if, I could lead the way in how to approach being in an alliance at the top with, with a group of men.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, no, I don't feel a sense of, like, pressure or responsibility. I do feel like a sense of pride and a sense of hope that even though I might be, like, one of the first, I won't be the last, Yeah.
This was awesome. This was amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. And I know I learned a lot. And yeah, just thank you. Like, I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having, like, I was, you definitely pulled me out of my comfort zone a little bit with this, and I appreciate that very, very much. So I appreciate you taking the time and, having the desire to ask questions, because, a lot of people don't.
This is true.
So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone who watched it. I know we went on for quite a while, but this was just so fascinating and I think important. And please hit up the comment section, ask questions. This is, I think, an ongoing discussion. And thank you so much for watching. Take care.